I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knew your name, your business, and sometimes even your secrets before you did. At least, that's what it always felt like to me. But as I got older, I realized my family wasn't like the others in town. There was something hidden, something unspoken, and it all seemed to swirl around my grandmother's attic. Grandma Evelyn was the kind of woman who seemed to belong to another era. She wore her hair pinned neatly, always had a pearl necklace around her neck, and kept a jar of butterscotch candies in her living room. Everyone in town admired her for her dignity and charm, but to me, she was more than that. She was my safe place. She raised me in many ways, especially when my mom was working late shifts or when the house felt too heavy with silence. From the time I could remember, Grandma had one odd quirk: her obsession with collecting letters. She kept showboxes stacked in the attic, each filled with envelopes tied neatly with string. Some had stamps faded from decades ago, others looked newer, but she never let me touch them. Whenever I'd ask, "Grandma, why do you keep all these letters? Who are they from?" she'd smile, her eyes softening but never fully answering. "Oh, honey, I just love collecting old letters. They remind me of stories, of people, of a time that doesn't come back." It was her standard line. She'd pat my cheek and change the subject, always steering me away from those boxes like they were too delicate for me to handle. My mom, on the other hand, hated when I brought up Grandma's letters. Mom and Grandma had a complicated relationship, one that I never fully understood. They loved each other, of course, but there was always tension underneath, like an invisible thread stretched too tight. Whenever I mentioned the attic, my mom's lips would press into a thin line, and she'd say, "Leave that stuff alone. Your grandma's sentimental, that's all." But deep down, I felt there was more. Growing up, I never knew much about my dad. Anytime I asked, Mom would shut me down with a firm, almost rehearsed response. He wasn't the kind of man who could stay. That's all you need to know. And she'd refuse to say his name. The only thing I ever knew was that he wasn't in the picture, and it was clear Mom didn't want to talk about him. Still, questions haunted me. Did he look like me? Did he care? Was he alive? Why didn't I deserve to know? Sometimes, when I was at Grandma's house, I felt she wanted to tell me more. There were moments when I caught her watching me with this expression, half pain, half longing, as if I reminded her of something she was too afraid to say out loud. But just as quickly, she'd swallow it down and go back to being the warm, steady presence I knew. When I turned 16, the attic became almost like a magnet for my curiosity. Every time I visited, I'd glance at the ceiling door with its dangling cord, wondering what secrets lived in those dusty boxes. But out of respect for Grandma, I never snooped. She trusted me, and I didn't want to betray that. It wasn't until years later, after she passed away, that the attic opened itself to me in ways I never imagined. The day of her funeral was the hardest day of my life. She had passed quietly in her sleep at 83, leaving behind a silence so deep I could barely breathe. People filled the church with flowers and whispered condolences, but nothing touched the hollow ache inside me. My mom stood like stone, dry-eyed and rigid, as if grief wasn't something she could afford to feel. After the service, when the relatives went home and casseroles piled up in the kitchen, it was just me and my mom at Grandma's house. The place felt different without her, like the walls themselves had lost their heartbeat. "Start packing some of her things," Mom said flatly, already pulling open drawers. Her voice was sharp, almost impatient, and I couldn't understand it. How could she move so quickly, boxing up pieces of the woman who had been the center of our lives? "Don't you think we should wait?" I asked softly. "No," she snapped. "The sooner we clear this out, the better." She wouldn't want us clinging, but I wasn't ready. And as I wandered through the house, every picture frame, every quilt, every perfume bottle felt like a goodbye I wasn't ready to give. That's when my eyes drifted upward to the ceiling door of the attic. The attic. Something inside me whispered that this was my moment. Grandma wasn't here to stop me anymore, but maybe she wanted me to find what she couldn't say. Maybe those letters were meant for me after all. I grabbed the cord, pulling it down until the creaky wooden ladder unfolded. Dust swirled around me as if the attic itself had been holding its breath all these years. "Where are you going?" Mom's voice cut from the hallway. I froze, one hand on the ladder. "The attic. Don't you think we should?" "No." Her tone was so sharp, it startled me. She rushed toward me, her face pale and hard. "There's nothing up there you need to see. Just leave it." But something in her eyes betrayed her words. There was fear there. Panic. That's when I knew. Whatever lived in those boxes wasn't just Grandma's sentimental keepsakes. It was something my mom desperately didn't want me to uncover. And suddenly, I couldn't walk away. "Grandma trusted me," I whispered, my voice trembling but steady enough. "If she kept something up there, I deserve to know what it is." My mom's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no words came. For a moment, she looked like a little girl lost in her own mother's shadow. Then she turned away, shaking her head. "You're making a mistake," she muttered, disappearing into the kitchen. My heart pounded as I climbed the ladder into the darkness above. The air was thick with dust, the wood groaning under my weight. Boxes were stacked neatly, just as I remembered, each tied with string. I pulled one closer, my hands trembling as I untied the knot. Inside were letters, dozens, maybe hundreds, all addressed to my grandmother. The return addresses varied, but one name appeared again and again. A name I had never seen before. And as I read the first line of the first letter, my world shifted. It wasn't just my grandma's story hidden in these envelopes. It was mine. The attic was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the air itself knew I was trespassing on a secret that had been waiting decades to be found. I sat cross-legged on the wooden floorboards, a stack of letters spread out before me, each envelope aged with time. My fingers trembled as I carefully opened the first one, the paper fragile, the ink slightly faded but still legible. "Dear Evelyn," it began. I froze. Evelyn. That was my grandmother's name. The handwriting was strong, deliberate, the kind of handwriting you'd imagine from someone who poured their whole heart into the page. I leaned closer, reading each word as if it might unravel the pieces of my life I never knew were missing. "I wish I could be there with you, but you know why I can't. Please, tell her someday. She deserves to know the truth about where she comes from. She deserves to know me." My chest tightened. Who was she? I flipped quickly to the bottom of the page, scanning the signature. The name hit me like a punch to the stomach. Michael Carter. I didn't recognize it. Not at first. But as I skimmed through the next few letters, the picture became clearer. Michael Carter wasn't just some old friend of Grandma's. He was writing about me. Letter after letter carried the same pleading tone. He asked about the little girl, wondered if she had his eyes, begged Grandma to let him be a part of her life. And every time, he signed it, "With love, Michael." By the third letter, I knew. Michael Carter was my father. I felt the air leave my lungs. For years, I had lived with the silence, the vague half-answers from my mom, the aching hole where my dad's presence should have been. And here, in my trembling hands, was the truth. He had wanted me. He had written, begged, longed for me. Tears blurred the words on the page, and I wiped them away angrily. Why hadn't I known? Why had my mom let me grow up thinking he abandoned us? The sound of footsteps creaked on the floor below, and I froze. My mom. I shoved the letters back into the box, clutching one in my hand. I couldn't let her take them from me, not before I had a chance to understand. With a deep breath, I climbed down the ladder, my heart racing as I stepped into the hallway. She was standing there, waiting. Her arms were crossed, her face pale, her eyes narrowed at the sight of the envelope in my hand. "You opened them," she whispered. The silence stretched thick between us. "Why didn't you tell me?" My voice cracked, anger and pain fighting to be heard. "He wrote to me. He wanted me. All these years, and you let me believe he didn't care." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know the whole story." "Then tell me," I shouted, the words bursting out of me. My chest heaved, my hands shaking as I held up the letter. Because right now, it looks like you lied. You lied to me, Mom. You lied about my dad. She flinched, just slightly, but enough for me to see the truth in her eyes. She had lied. For the first time, I realized how much she feared this moment, not me finding out about him, but me turning against her because of it. You don't understand what kind of man he was, she said finally, her voice low and trembling. I shook my head, clutching the paper like a lifeline. All I understand is that he wanted me. He wanted to know me. And you kept him from me. Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them back. My mom was always good at building walls, at locking her feelings away where no one could reach them. It wasn't that simple, she said. Then make it simple, I shot back. Because right now, it feels like you ripped half my life away from me. For a moment, she just stood there, staring at me as if she couldn't recognize the daughter in front of her. And then, without another word, she turned and walked down the hallway, leaving me standing there with the weight of the truth in my hands. I spent the next few hours locked in my room, rereading the letters over and over again. Each one painted the same picture. A man desperate to be in his child's life, but kept at arm's length by circumstances I didn't fully understand. One letter, in particular, broke me. Please, Evelyn, I'm begging you. She deserves to know she has a father who loves her. Even if you and her mother hate me, please don't let her grow up thinking she was unwanted. Unwanted. That word had echoed in my heart for years. And now, in this fragile paper, I saw how wrong I had been. The next morning, I woke up with a new determination. If my mom wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. I started small. I Googled his name, Michael Carter, Ohio. Pages of results filled the screen, but none felt like the man in the letters. Some were too old, some too young, some in places that didn't line up. My heart pounded as I scrolled, desperate for a clue. Then I saw it. A small obituary from just 2 years ago. Michael Carter, 54, survived by his wife, Linda, and 2 children, Daniel and Grace. My hands went cold. He was gone. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with tears. He was dead. The man who had written to me, the man who had wanted me, was gone before I ever had the chance to meet him. But the obituary said something else too. He had a wife. He had children. A whole family. Which meant I wasn't just the daughter he never knew. I had siblings. And they had no idea I existed. The letters suddenly felt heavier in my hands, the attic silence echoing in my ears. Grandma had guarded this secret all her life, and my mom had done everything to keep it buried. But now that I knew, there was no going back. I wasn't just a daughter without a father anymore. I was a stranger to a family that didn't even know I was theirs. The next few days blurred together, my mind consumed with questions I couldn't silence. I kept rereading the obituary, memorizing the names. Linda, Daniel, Grace. A wife. 2 kids. My father had lived an entire life without me, and yet his letters screamed that he wanted me. Which meant something had kept him away. Something, or someone. Every time I looked at my mom, bitterness burned in my chest. She went about her routine, washing dishes, sorting through Grandma's belongings, moving like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I wanted to scream at her, shake her, demand answers. But she had made it clear. She wasn't going to give me the truth willingly. And the more she resisted, the more I knew I had to find it myself. One night, when she finally fell asleep on the couch, I grabbed my laptop, sat cross-legged on my bed, and started digging deeper. Daniel Carter. Grace Carter. The names were common enough, but after narrowing it down by location, Columbus, Ohio, I found them. Grace was 17, just a year younger than me. Her Instagram was public, filled with pictures of football games, friends at the mall, and family dinners. In almost every shot there was Linda, her mom, and sometimes an older brother I guessed was Daniel. I stared at those pictures for hours. Grace looked like me. Not identical, but enough to make my heart race. Same shaped nose, same smile that tilted slightly higher on one side, even the same dark brown hair. It was like staring into an alternate version of myself, the girl I might have been if my father had been part of my life. And yet, she had no idea I existed. I thought about sending her a message. Just typing, "Hi, I think we might be sisters." But what would that do? What if she thought I was crazy? What if she told her mom and Linda shut me out completely? Still, the thought wouldn't leave me. I grabbed one of the letters from my drawer, the one where my dad had begged Grandma to let me know about him. I read it again, his words spilling into me like a voice from the grave. She deserves to know she has a father who loves her. I whispered the words out loud, like a promise. I deserve to know. And they deserve to know me. That night, I made up my mind. I was going to meet them. The next weekend, I told my mom I was staying over at a friend's house. She barely looked up from the stack of bills on the table, just muttered, "Fine. Be home tomorrow." My hands shook as I packed a backpack, sliding a few of my dad's letters inside. They felt like proof, like armor, like the only thing I had to hold onto in case the world refused to believe me. The bus ride to Columbus felt endless. Every mile closer to their neighborhood, my stomach twisted tighter. What if they hated me? What if showing up like this ruined their lives? But the other thought, the one that had been haunting me since the attic, was stronger. What if they wanted me too? When I finally stepped off the bus, I pulled up the address I had found online. Their house was only a few blocks away, in a quiet suburban neighborhood with neat lawns and American flags on porches. Kids rode bikes in the street, and I walked past them like I was in some dream. Then I saw it. The Carter house. It was 2 stories, pale blue with white shutters. There was a basketball hoop in the driveway and flower pots on the porch. It looked like every picture-perfect family home I had ever wished for. I stood at the edge of the yard, my backpack heavy on my shoulder, my legs frozen. I wanted to run. I wanted to knock. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The front door opened. Grace stepped out, laughing into her phone, her hair pulled back into a ponytail. She looked so alive, so normal, so familiar. I nearly dropped my bag. I was staring at my sister. My real, flesh and blood sister. She glanced up, catching sight of me standing awkwardly by the sidewalk. For a moment, her brow furrowed. Then she smiled politely, the way you do at strangers in your neighborhood. "Hey," she said, covering her phone. "Do you need something?" My mouth went dry. My throat closed. All the words I had rehearsed on the bus vanished. Sorry," I stammered. "I was just lost." Her eyes softened. "Do you need directions?" I nodded quickly, backing away. "Yeah. Sorry to bother you." She gave me a friendly smile before going back to her call, walking down the driveway. I turned and walked fast, my pulse racing. I couldn't do it. I couldn't just blurt it out. Not like that. But as I rounded the corner, tears stung my eyes. I had just spoken to my sister, and she had no idea who I was. No idea that the girl stammering on the sidewalk was family. That night, I stayed in a cheap motel, clutching the letters like lifelines. I read them over and over until dawn broke, my chest aching with the weight of everything I couldn't say. By the time I got home the next day, Mom was waiting for me. She was sitting at the kitchen table, one of the letters in her hand. "Where were you?" she asked quietly, too calmly. My stomach dropped. She knew. "I went to see them," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I found their house." Her face crumpled, just for a second, before hardening again. "You had no right." "No right?" I exploded, slamming my backpack onto the table. "I had every right. He was my father, Mom. He wanted me. And you kept him from me. You kept them from me." Her hands shook as she set the letter down. "You don't understand what you're doing. That family." She stopped, biting her lip, her voice breaking. "That family doesn't want you." The words sliced through me. I stared at her, fury and grief crashing inside me. You don't know that. I do, she whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Because I made sure of it. The room tilted, the ground slipping beneath me. What are you talking about? But she only shook her head, silent again, retreating into that place where she locked all her secrets away. And I knew, in that moment, that the truth went deeper than I imagined. It wasn't just about my dad. It was about something darker, something my mom was still hiding. And whatever it was, it had the power to destroy everything. I couldn't stop shaking after that conversation. My mom's words echoed in my head, because I made sure of it. What did that even mean? How could she make sure a family didn't want me when they didn't even know I existed? That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying every moment of my childhood where my mom had shut down any mention of my dad. All those times she refused to say his name, or how her face hardened when I asked why he left. It all made sense now. She hadn't just been hiding him. She had been hiding me. I got up quietly, careful not to wake her, and crept into the kitchen. My backpack sat on the floor, still filled with letters. I pulled out a stack and spread them across the table. Each one screamed the same truth. He loved me. He wanted me. But my mom, she had built her entire life around making sure I never knew him. I stared at the letters until the sun rose, my heart pounding with the realization that if I wanted answers, I wasn't going to get them from her. I had to go back to the Carters. The next weekend, I returned to Columbus. This time, I wasn't going to freeze up or run away. I was going to knock on that door and tell them the truth, no matter how much it terrified me. As I walked up the driveway, my palms were sweaty, my knees weak. The house looked the same as before, flowers on the porch, the basketball hoop in the driveway, like some postcard version of family life. I took a deep breath and rang the bell. For a moment, silence. Then the door opened. Linda Carter stood there. My father's widow. My stepmother, though she didn't know it. She was older than in the photos, her hair streaked with gray, her face lined with grief. She looked at me with polite confusion, the way you do when a stranger shows up on your doorstep. Yes? She asked gently. My voice caught in my throat, but I forced the words out. Hi. My name's Emma. I think I might be related to you. Her brow furrowed. Related? How? I gripped the strap of my backpack, praying my legs wouldn't give out. I think Michael Carter was my father. The air between us froze. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to something harder, something guarded. I don't know what you think you're doing, she said, her voice firm now, clipped. But you need to leave. Please, I begged, fumbling with my bag. I have letters. He wrote to my grandmother for years. He wanted me. I said leave, she snapped, stepping forward, her eyes blazing with something I couldn't quite name. Fear? Anger? Both. Before I could speak again, a voice called from inside. Mom? Who is it? Grace appeared in the hallway, her ponytail swinging, her face curious. She stopped when she saw me, her eyes widening in recognition. It's that girl, she whispered. The one from the sidewalk. Linda turned sharply. Go upstairs, Grace. But Grace didn't move. Her eyes darted between me and her mom. What's going on? Nothing you need to worry about, Linda said tightly, her hands still gripping the door. I stepped forward, desperation breaking through my fear. Grace, my voice cracked. I'm your sister. Grace froze, her mouth falling open. Go upstairs, Linda repeated, her voice trembling now. Right now. But Grace didn't. She stared at me like she was seeing her own reflection for the first time. Mom, she whispered. She looks like me. Linda's face hardened. That's enough. Both of you, enough. She slammed the door shut, the sound echoing in my chest like a gunshot. I stood there on the porch, my heart splintering into 1,000 pieces. I wanted to scream, to pound on the door, to make her listen. But instead, I stumbled back down the steps, tears blurring my vision. Back at the bus station, I sat on a bench clutching the letters to my chest. My plan had failed. They didn't want me. Or at least, Linda didn't. But the way Grace had looked at me, I knew she felt something too. She saw it. The resemblance. The truth. I didn't realize until later that night that she had followed me online. When I checked my Instagram before bed, I had a new follower. Grace Carter. My heart leapt into my throat. I clicked her profile, and sure enough, she had liked one of my old pictures, a photo of me at the county fair with Grandma last summer. A message popped up. Grace, is it true? About what you said. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaking. Me? Yes. He was my dad too. I have proof. There was a long pause. Then her reply. Grace, meet me. Tomorrow. Don't tell my mom. The next day, we met at a coffee shop near her school. I got there early, my stomach twisting with nerves, the letters clutched in my bag. When Grace walked in, my breath caught. It was like looking in a mirror I'd never seen before. Different clothes, different life, but the same eyes, the same crooked smile. She slid into the seat across from me, her expression a mix of suspicion and hope. Show me. With shaking hands, I pulled out the letters and spread them across the table. She read silently, her fingers tracing the words, her brow furrowing deeper with every line. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. He wrote these about you? I nodded, tears threatening. He wanted me. He wanted to know me. But my mom, she never let him. She told me he left, that he didn't care. I only found these after my grandma died. Grace leaned back, her hands trembling. Mom never said anything. She always said Dad was a good man, that he was honest with her. But if he kept this a secret, her voice broke. It means he lied to us too. The weight of it hit both of us at the same time. My dad hadn't just been stolen from me. He had built a life with them, all while another life waited in the shadows. Grace wiped her eyes angrily. I can't believe this. My whole life, and he was hiding you. Why would he do that? I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I don't think it was his choice. I think my mom. She made sure of it. Grace looked at me, her expression torn between anger and sympathy. What do we do now? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the truth was out, and it was too big to stay buried. When I got home that night, my mom was waiting at the table again, the look on her face telling me she knew where I had been. You talked to her, didn't you? She said, her voice low, dangerous. I didn't deny it. She deserves to know. Just like I did. Her eyes filled with tears, her shoulders sagging as if the fight had finally drained out of her. For the first time, she looked small, fragile, broken. There are things you don't understand, she whispered. Things about your father. Things I kept from you because I thought it was the only way to protect you. I clenched my fists. Protect me from what? Her silence stretched so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, finally, she said it. From the truth about the kind of man he really was. Her words hung in the air like smoke. From the truth about the kind of man he really was. I stared at my mom across the kitchen table, my chest pounding. You're lying, I whispered. He wrote me letters. He wanted me. He loved me. Her eyes filled with tears, but her mouth twisted in pain. Yes, he wrote. Yes, he said all the right words. But Emma, he wasn't the man you think he was. I slammed my fist on the table, the letters rattling in my backpack. You've been lying my whole life. Why should I believe you now? She flinched, her shoulders trembling. Because I was there, she said, her voice breaking. Because I saw the man behind the letters. I leaned back, my throat tight, waiting. She took a long breath, her eyes unfocused, as if she was pulling memories out of a place she had buried deep. When I met Michael, he was charming. He had that smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. I was young, too young, and he swept me up like a storm. Your grandma warned me. She said he had a history, women, lies, broken promises. But I didn't want to listen. I thought I was different. I thought he loved me. Her hands twisted in her lap. Then I got pregnant with you. At first, he swore he'd be there. He told me we'd be a family. But the moment things got hard, the cracks showed. He disappeared for days, came back with excuses, with lipstick on his shirt. I begged him to choose us. And he looked me in the eye and said he couldn't. That he wasn't ready. That I was asking too much. Her voice faltered, and for the first time, I saw the young girl she must have been back then, scared, heartbroken, alone. I went to your grandma's house that night and collapsed on her floor, she whispered. I told her I couldn't raise a baby with him. That he'd destroy us both. And she promised me. She promised me she'd make sure you were safe. That's when she told him to stay away. That's why he wrote to her and not to me. She never gave me those letters because she knew I wouldn't go back. I shook my head, tears spilling down my face. But he wanted me. He wanted to know me. Yes, she said softly, her own tears falling now. Maybe he did. But wanting you and being the kind of father you needed are two very different things. He couldn't even be there for me. He couldn't stay faithful. He couldn't stay sober. He couldn't stay. Her words cut deep, but so did the truth in her eyes. She wasn't lying. She was remembering. I buried my face in my hands, sobs ripping out of me. For years, I had built this fantasy of a father who loved me but was stolen away. And now, I was being told he was broken, flawed, incapable of being what I needed. Why didn't you just tell me? I choked out. Why let me grow up thinking he didn't care at all? Because, she whispered, reaching for my hand, I thought it would be easier for you to hate him than to know the truth. I thought if you believed he left, you could move on. I thought if you never knew about them, his other family, you wouldn't feel like you weren't enough. Her hand trembled against mine, her eyes pleading. I was trying to protect you, Emma. Maybe I was wrong. But everything I did it because I love you. I looked at her through my tears, my heart torn between anger and understanding. For so long, I had painted her as the villain. And maybe she had lied. Maybe she had stolen pieces of my life. But she had also carried the burden of trying to shield me from a man who might have broken me more than his absence ever did. The next day, I met Grace again. We sat in the same coffee shop, our drinks untouched between us. I told her everything my mom had said, the lies, the letters, the truth about who our father really was. Grace's face crumpled as she listened. So, he was living two lives. With your mom. With my mom. With us. I nodded. And in the end, he wasn't really there for either of us. Tears slipped down her cheeks, and I reached across the table, taking her hand. But that doesn't mean we can't be there for each other. She squeezed my hand, her eyes meeting mine. Sisters, she whispered. Sisters, I said back, my voice breaking. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Grace and I started talking every day, filling in the gaps of the years we had missed. She showed me pictures of Dad I had never seen, him teaching her to ride a bike, cheering at Daniel's football games, smiling with his arm around Linda. Pictures of a man who seemed so different from the one my mom remembered. Maybe both versions were true. Maybe he had been broken with my mom, but tried to change with them. Maybe he had wanted to do better the second time around. Maybe he had succeeded, at least partly. I'll never know for sure. But what I do know is this. He loved me in the only way he knew how. Through letters. Through words he never had the courage to act on. And while that wasn't enough to make him the father I needed, it was enough to prove that I wasn't unwanted. I never was. One evening, I sat with my mom on the porch, the sun setting in streaks of gold and pink across the sky. For the first time in weeks, the silence between us felt softer. I met Grace today, I said quietly. My mom's face tightened, but she didn't interrupt. She's amazing, I continued. And she deserves to know the truth too. We both do. And I want you to be okay with that. I need you to be okay with that. Tears filled her eyes again, but she nodded. If she's your sister, then she's family. And if you need her, then I'll try to understand. I leaned against her shoulder, the first time I had done that since Grandma's funeral. Thank you. For a long moment, we just sat there, watching the sky fade. And for the first time, I felt like maybe the cracks in our family could be mended, not perfectly, but enough to let the light through. I still keep the letters in a box under my bed. Some days, I read them and cry for the father I never had. Other days, I read them and smile, grateful that at least he tried in his own broken way. But most days, I don't need to read them at all. Because now, I have something better than the fantasy of a father who could never stay. I have my mom, who, flawed as she is, never stopped fighting to protect me. I have Grace, my sister, who walked into my life when I needed her most. And I have the truth. Painful, messy, complicated, but real. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough.